the first thing we're going to be discussing, yesterday we took the interns on a tour of our water tanks, and today we're going to discuss another aspect of the water district.
Yeah, you can introduce Mr. Canetta, who actually has some experiences about a water tank, so they have in his town, so he can give
Too
you
much
some
experience.
guidance.
I guess if it's possible, if you don't mind, I'd like to introduce, it's Anthony Canetta. He's the manager of the Westchester Joint Waterworks, and the purpose this morning is to give a brief overview of a beginning of a possibility of a partnership or some type of agreement or working together relationship that the Westchester Joint Waterworks with the Town of Greenburgh Consolidated Water District is considering for a way that we might be able to have some opportunities for savings, because we both have significant projects in play, and there might be an opportunity that we can work together to realize savings for our residents as well as those of those involved with the waterworks, in partnership actually with New York City for the creation of pump stations to move water both into our community where we need it as our needs are changing, and with the waterworks as well. And maybe Tony might want to talk a little bit more about that.
Okay. My name is Tony Canetta. I graduated college 45 years ago, civil engineering. My career interests are in promoting, at least in the water environment, intermunicipal cooperation, intermunicipal joint efforts. So first I'd like to introduce who the Waterworks is so that you know something about us, who we are, who we serve water to, where we get our water from, how much water we supply to our customers, where our facilities are, what our future plans are, and what we possibly might be able to do with Greenburgh, and where we might be able to do something with Greenburgh. So a quick start on those 7 or 8 topics. The Westchester Joint Waterworks is an intermunicipal entity. We are a governmental entity, and we go back almost 100 years, 90 years, 89 years. We were created in 1927, and the members, again, are elected officials. We have 3 trustees, the mayor of the village of Mamaroneck, the supervisor of the town of Mamaroneck, and the mayor supervisor of the town of Harrison. We provide water to 8 communities. The shared services, the shared management of the waterworks is in the hands of the 3, town of Mamaroneck, village of Mamaroneck, town of Harrison. But we supply the water to 5 other communities on a wholesale basis to the village of Larchmont, and a wholesale basis through Suez United Water, which is a private firm, who then provides the water to the village of Rye Brook, the village of Portchester, and the city of Rye. So we are an intermunicipal entity. We've been in the business of intermunicipal cooperation and sharing of services for the last 89 years, and we'd like to explore opportunities for doing something similar in the town of Greenburgh. Where do we get our water from? I'd like to go up to a map and make it easy to follow. The area outlined in the dark boundary is our immediate service area of our 3 member municipalities: the town of Harrison, the town of Mamaroneck, and the village of Mamaroneck. The other communities that are served, Rye Brook, Portchester, Rye, village of Larchmont, and a small section of New Rochelle. We currently get water from 2 main sources. This is all of the water, 100% of our water comes from the Catskill, Delaware system. It's New York City's water supply. 90% of that water does not need to be filtered. It's been approved by EPA and the State Health Department to what they call filtration avoidance determination. Water comes through two major aqueducts from 125 miles away, crosses under the Hudson, through the Catskill Aqueduct and the Delaware Aqueduct. These are massive structures. The diameter of the Delaware Aqueduct is the equivalent to a three-story building. Portions of it, especially in the Bronx, are down 700 or 800 feet. That's 70 stories. Massive engineering efforts. So we get 50% of our water through one of the shafts. Think of a shaft as a pipe in the ground with a straw coming up, and the pressure that's in that aqueduct pushes the water up to the shaft and comes out at the surface. And our main intake is at shaft 22 in the city of Yonkers. Our second major source is at Rye Lake, which is next to Westchester County Airport. On any given day and throughout the year, we get about half of our water from each of the sources. It's distributed through a series of transmission lines and water mains in the street. And we store the water in 7 different tanks. We have 2 pump stations that add the chemicals that are needed to prevent lead and copper leaching into the water. And the city adds fluoride at a particular plant that they have to Tuca Cave. So this half of our water is already fluoridated. The water that we get from Rye Lake, we fluoridate. In order to provide all of our customers with what's called ultraviolet light treated water, which is available through the aqueduct here at shaft 22, we have been asked by the state and have agreed to replace this water source with a connection at shaft 20. Okay? So that's basically, we distribute our water. These orange arrows here is where we distribute our water to United Water. We have 15,000 customers. That corresponds to about 60,000 residents. A customer is a house connection or a commercial connection. So that makes up about 65% of the water that we withdraw from the New York City supply. About 10% of the water goes to the village of Larchmont, and about 25% of the water is sold to Suez, who distributes it to Rye Brook, Westchester, and Rye. Our average day throughout the year, if we were to take the water that's used on a 365-day basis, our average use is about 13 or 14 million gallons a year. A lot of the use flows are affected by weather. Hot, dry years, more water is used. Wet years, less water is used. Our peak day has been about 27 million gallons a day. Our annual use from year to year varies between 4 to 4.5 billion gallons a year. The average person uses about 100 gallons per person per day. So if you want to know if there's a leak in your house, multiply the number of people in your house, multiply it by 90 days if you get a quarterly bill. And if you've got 3 people and you're getting a bill for much more than 27,000 gallons a quarter, you probably have a leak or you're using too much irrigation water. It's a quick check on it. So in preparing to discontinue the use of the Rye Lake source and coming into Greenburgh, we developed a plan that we submitted to New York State Department of Health 18 months ago. And that plan, based upon discussions with New York City Department of Environmental Protection, who is the provider of the water, they suggested that we get our water, replace this source with shaft 20. Currently, this source only has the capacity to provide half of the flow needed, 20 million gallons a day on average, 18 to 20 million gallons a day, and this could only provide half. If our peak day is 27, as I mentioned, and that'll probably increase in the future to about 32 million gallons a day, if one of the sources were out of commission for one reason or another, neither source can provide 100% of the water. One of the issues that we have to deal with, all of the municipalities have to deal with, is called vulnerability. Vulnerability, what do you do? Where are you vulnerable if you lose one of your facilities? So what's being promoted is resiliency and redundancy. So while this is fixed, we have a 4.5-mile pipeline that brings the water from Yonkers into the town of Mamaroneck. That can only provide half the water that we might need, let's say, in a summer month. This also can only provide half the water, but what New York City DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, and what the State Health Department, and at the federal level, US EPA, they'd like to see that resiliency, that redundancy, that minimizing of vulnerability, to provide the volume here necessary that if this were out of commission for one reason or another, this can provide 100% of the water needed for the maximum day. So that's what we're exploring right now. We developed a plan for that. A pump station would be located here at Knollwood and Stadium Road, right across the street from your treatment facility, followed by a 7-mile pipeline that brings the water into West Harrison, and then along Anderson Hill Road, and then back into the system the way we have it today. Our initial plan called for our own pump station and treatment plant, but that was to satisfy the state that we had a plan. They endorsed the plan. They gave it support, and then we said, okay, now that we got your support, let's see if we can work something out in terms of a shared facility. And what we're looking at now, if we proceed on this path, is look at ways of economizing and saving money. A single foundation, a single building, with the divisions that are necessary, because ultimately the town of Greenburgh is responsible for the operation and management of its facilities and pumps and service. So we're responsible for ours. But if there are certain things that can be shared roof, shared foundation, shared driveways, shared emergency parts, cutting down on the inventory that needs to be at hand, this is exactly what we've been doing for many years with our 3 municipalities. So we don't have 3 separate water departments at the Westchester Joint Waterworks. It's a single water department, us, the Waterworks, providing the services to all 3 municipalities. That's it in a nutshell. Our engineers have been talking to one another, and I'll take any questions or...
The bottom line is we had to do the work also for ourselves, so this is something that's in the interest of both the residents of the town and the other communities.
Yeah, that is correct. As the Waterworks has a long history dating back to the 20s, as you know, the Consolidated Water District was created in the early 50s, and our main pump station is at its point where it's time to do a significant renovation to, again, some of the points that Mr. Canetta brought up, which includes hardening and being resilient. We too face those same issues, and we realize it's a time to modernize, improve, and get ourselves set for the next 50, 60, 70 years. And because we're both looking at the same point, there's an opportunity that we feel we can both achieve potentially savings to our customers, while at the same time providing for resiliency that's necessary.
Right, and this is so we're being asked to approve a resolution that would basically ask the state to give us funding for a shared service, agreement.
Can you talk about the cost of how much this would cost generally? How long it's going to take to run this pipe from Greenburgh to Mamaroneck or
Sure.
Harrison, and the disruptions that might occur as a result of that?
The overall project, our initial analysis, and this is a conceptual plan which gets refined at different levels of engineering and cost estimates. Our estimate for the pump station, if it were ours alone, is on the order of about 20 to 25 million. The reason why there's some uncertainty, more analysis is needed to determine whether it's more efficient to provide the necessary treatment of the water, besides just the pumping, at this location or at some other location. That treatment is related to disinfection, and in order to disinfect, an important parameter is what's called contact time. When the disinfectant chemical is used, it needs a certain amount of contact time, and you can't put it right up at the beginning of the distribution area. The other uncertainty is whether we install all of the pumps that are needed for the long term, or to have enough room for what's needed in the long term, but adding the additional pumps as water use increases and et cetera. So that's our initial look at it. The pipeline is fairly expensive. It's in three parts. The first part goes along Tarrytown Road to close to the county center. The second segment goes through the city of White Plains, skirts the downtown area, and the third segment is in the town of Harrison. And so this is about 20 to 25 million. These segments are about 20 to 30 million dollars each, but they will last 100 years. Okay? Once the pipe is in the ground, it'll last a long time. Time frames, our initial plan was looking at this all being done about the year 2020, which is about 4.5 years from now. In order to ensure that our residents, especially in the northern area, since this is not ultraviolet treated water, we're in the process of already constructing a series of facilities and improvements to our pump stations, so that for 7 or 8 months of the year, since this can provide 100% of the demand, all of these people would be getting UV treated water. Doing this allows the state to give us a bit more breathing room on the scheduling for this. Needless to say, the scheduling of a joint facility, if we needed to accelerate our schedule to match yours, if we have an agreement in place, we would do that. The pipeline itself is what really takes a long time. And that pipeline, we could have a shared building, but we don't bring in all the guts up front. You know, we can bring our pumps in at a later time than you might need.
The state of New York recently approved funding for water infrastructure. Do you anticipate that we would get some of the funding or apply for that?
I think we should apply for some of the funding. The grant that's coming through EFC, the Environmental Facilities Corporation, they would like to see shovel-ready, but then there may be other grants, shovel-ready meaning all the design is done. But since they've added a couple of rounds to it, we may get a little bit of a better opportunity for that. And then there are other grants that may be available that are more oriented to engineering design and analysis.
Who actually pays for all the infrastructure that you're going to be putting?
The way it works for us, our share of anything, is the 3 municipalities share in the capital cost. This would be a capital project. Their share is, like I said, 65%. The way they share their 65% is based on their water use. So the town of Harrison right now is about 50%. The town of Mamaroneck is about 20%. And the village of Mamaroneck is about 30%. That's how they share. And then we negotiate agreements with our wholesale customers as to how they share in the capital. And they get their bill. We can't include their flow unless there's a commitment that they pay their share for the capital investment.
So town of Greenburgh residents will not be picking up the cost of that?
Not any part of ours. If it's a shared building, part of our negotiations and analysis will include who will own the building, who will construct it, and let's say it's Greenburgh, because it is in Greenburgh, and that would be a reasonable approach. Then we would have to negotiate a financial agreement as to whether we pay our share of the capital, what that share is, and do we pay certain costs as a capital reimbursement and other costs as O&M.
Would we be sharing in the cost of building the pipeline as
No,
it goes through
no, no.
Greenburgh?
Unless it's gonna carry some of your water, and, we don't envision that now, but we did say that if you'd like an emergency interconnection with our pipeline to serve a particular part of Greenburgh, if we're passing through there, it would probably be an insignificant cost compared to the main cost, with interconnections.
Which segment are you doing first, and how long is?
Right now, in the interest of time, the conceptual plan calls for the pump station, and each of the three segments is separate contracts. So all three segments would be done at the same time.
So you don't know how long each segment will take, or you haven't?
We're hoping that the construction is typically about 3 years for each of those segments, and planning and design about a year, and that's how we come up with the 4-year time frame. And that's assuming that, we don't run into major obstacles as the work progresses.
I guess the other thing would be what kind of disruption it is in the communities where it's going through. Is it going, how many people will be affected?
The smallest segment is Stadium Road, and then beyond that, it's Tarrytown Road, which is very wide, and one of the reasons why that was picked. So that's where we are in Greenburgh. Beyond that, to accommodate, and we had many meetings with the city of White Plains, the cheapest alternative would have been to go right through downtown White Plains. Which is the cheapest and the fastest, but that would be the nightmare 5 or 10 years from now when you have a water main break. So we decided to skirt the downtown area.
We need an interconnect between the East Rumbrook pump and the Knollwood pump.
Yes, that's in our plan also.
How does your project help offset that cost?
At the present time, we haven't gotten to the detailed analysis to see whether we could piggyback with you. Under the worst-case scenario, if we were not able to piggyback with you, it would be a second pipeline that would in and of itself create a redundancy that would benefit each of us.
I was just curious, you just said like 5 or 10 years from now, there could be, say there was a water main break in White Plains. What's the life of a pipe?
With the big pipes like that, 100 years, easily 100 years. This 4.5-mile pipeline was built in 1957. We had 2 minor joint leaks that weren't major, and 1 leak that lasted 3 months. We're in litigation because we believe it was caused by an outside party.
When there's water main breaks, typically how long after pipe is built, installed, would you see water main breaks?
Transmission lines usually don't break. So there's 3 main categories of pipes. Transmission lines that are 36 to 48 to 60 inches in diameter. Those are fairly solid. Easily you can go 50 to 70 years without a break. Then you have the larger lines, distribution lines that are 12 to 18 inches. They might break on occasion. The ones that are more likely to break are the lines, the street lines, where especially in the winter the water's not moving at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the frost and cold, water expands. As it gets colder, it expands, the pressure builds up, and that's where you get your leaks.
And those are usually older pipes.
And older pipes, or quite a few leaks take place, and we don't know exactly who caused it, but at times you may have a contractor or a DPW personnel or a highway personnel go to a hydrant, take water out of a hydrant. They turn it on quickly, and then they quickly turn off the water. That causes water hammer, and that can cause a leak a mile away, and we would never know that there was a contractor that did that for about a 20-minute period.
Oh, wow. I never knew
It's a
that.
very common occurrence. Victor knows as much as I know. And you just can't help it. Just can't help it.
Interesting.
Okay? So if there are any other questions, I'll
We
be.
talk about the letter of intent.
Yes,
and
the letter
what
of
you would need
intent.
from the town.
We'd like to embark on more detailed discussions and analysis, and we think it's a good idea for each of our boards, your board and our board, we meet later this afternoon, could be acted on today or the next meeting 2 weeks from now. We think it would be wise to have a memorandum of intent, letter of intent, letter of interest, to explore and participate at least to the next phase and then the next phase of this effort.
Well, an important part of that, of course, would be the answer to the question as to, for our interconnect, what cost savings would there be for that? You're doing all of this pipe. We need a relatively short piece of pipe to interconnect, and once we connect from East Rumbrook Pump Station to Norwood, that benefits you too, because the water's
Oh, yeah, yes.
that's coming in there.
That's right, even if we haven't put
So
our
I would
line
not
in.
expect the town to pick up all the freight on that pipe.
Yeah, I think we're each gonna have to bring some, the engineers and financial experts to say what's a fair way to divide up the pie of the cost. Yes, let's say, I mean, for us, we wouldn't embark on this until this gets going. We don't wanna put the cart before the horse. And the fact, if you moved quicker on that, and the fact that you have it, and if our pump station is up and running, we have some degree of reliance, ability to call upon you, hey, can you help us? If something happens in the month of January when flows are low, and yeah, you can help us. And we do that now here. We have a number of interconnections, and we're negotiating some interconnections now with White Plains.
So this memorandum of agreement would spell out that we're not bound by this if we don't come to terms on the finance.
Right, I think the memorandum of intent or agreement, letter, whatever we leave it to the attorneys to see what's, I think it's gonna be an iterative agreement that may start with 1 or 2 pages, and then maybe 6 to 12 months later, it's 3 or 4 pages, and then at some point, I can envision a detailed agreement on parts that get shared, who services the boiler, who cleans the driveway, do we buy the chemicals and supplies that we need jointly, or does Greenburgh buy them and then you bill it? The financial contract attorneys will have a field day in preparing that.
Right, but the important thing is we're dealing with the infrastructure. We're addressing, this is a significant,
And again, it should be noted, this is
Initiative.
really the first step. We've informally spoken with each other, but we feel to go any further, to begin answering some of the questions about the impacts, the costs, the sharing, how, we can't get there until we at least, from our board and Waterworks board, have some type of agreement, just sort of an understanding that we're going, we are authorized to move forward, because we think we're at a point where we see benefits, but we now have to get into the details, and it's really important that the town of Greenburgh and Waterworks Board are able to get at least to the initial agreement phase.
yeah, I was at a civic association meeting on Saturday, and there was, or Sunday, and there was a member of the Water District Advisory Board who spoke to me, and this is really an important initiative, and the Water District Advisory Board has been discussing this as well for a number of months.
Yeah, that is definitely correct. This has, the advisory board has been providing guidance as they were established to do, and this is all working together.
Any other questions?
So we would put this on an agenda. Do we want to just do a letter of intent or do it by a formal resolution?
Well, I think we'd circulate a letter of intent or a memorandum of understanding to the board. You will make changes if you think they're necessary, and ultimately we'll have a resolution on the agenda,
On June 8th?
to consider that letter of intent. We'll take it from there.
Okay.
Okay, thank you
Thank
for your
you.
time. Hopefully we'll keep going down and reach these steps.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.